Hopefully they're going to go take off their gowns and caps, I think, but hopefully they'll make their way back in here. I want to talk a little bit, kind of to them specifically, but I've got a message for all of us here this morning, and a big part of this message, when Pastor asked me, well, take a step back here. So a couple months ago when I learned that today when we were getting this scheduled, with the graduating seniors, and Pastor, he said, hey, don't forget that you're ministering on this Sunday. So since then, I've just been thinking about, what's important for them to hear, What's important for that age, that generation, that group of kids. What's important for them to hear? And I went through a bunch of different topics, and what I landed on was a simple word. And it's time. Yes. T-I-M-E, time. And as I thought about this, I'm like, you know what? This isn't just for the 18-year-olds. This is a message for all of us. Even I see my 9-year-old back there. It's a message for him. I mean, if you're 90 years old, it's a message for you. It's an interesting one, and one of the things that brought this topic to my attention as I was praying about what to minister on was just a devotional that I read basically a couple months ago, and I want to read a part of this devotional and then go into the message here a little bit. So this starts out, it goes like this. If you documented how you spend your time for a week, accounting for every half hour, what do you think you would find? This was conviction to me. So I'm telling you what convicted me. But they're making their way back in here. So for you graduating seniors, I want you to listen close to this message here this morning. But if you documented how you spend your time for a week, accounting for every half hour, what do you think you would find? Most books and experts on time management focus on not wasting, quote unquote, wasting any time, and being as efficient and productive as possible. Has anybody ever gotten their to-do list done? Like, if you've gotten your to-do list done, hang out after the service. I need to talk to you because I need to figure out how to do that, whatever you're doing. But most books and experts on time management focus on not wasting any time and being as efficient and productive as possible. I'll get to this here in a little bit, but that's not how redeeming time is presented in the Bible. It's not to be as efficient and productive as possible. That's not what redeeming the time means. Redeeming time is not about worshiping work or becoming consumed with minutes of the day. It's a way of honoring God. It's to work hard, and it's to play hard, and it's to learn to recharge without the shame of a wasted life. Squandered time is more than lost time. Squandered time is more than lost time. It's the loss of a precious commodity to help us live in certain victory and wisdom as we see clearly in God's word. This may be hard to hear, but it's the truth. Wasted time diminishes the potential impact that comes from your life. And our approach to time is all wrong. We enter a day and find ourselves getting beat by the clock. Either we don't work hard and aren't as productive as we'd like, or we don't seem to find the time to relax and to truly wind down. I like to call this living in the mushy middle. The mushy middle is how Laodicea lived. Neither hot nor cold, just lukewarm. Jesus was appealing to the church, dripping with modern prosperity to get out of that mushy middle. No one likes mushy anything, and certainly not the mushy middle. Redeeming time is not about being busy. You can take a nap to the glory of God. You can sit and cuddle with your kid and honor God big time. The goal is to take the initiative on time so we can live redemptive, shame-free lives. Like I said, that was conviction for me. But what I want to dig into this a little bit. I want to talk about time. Talk about time here. And again, this is really for all of us, but since it's graduating senior Sunday, it's really specifically for you. So let's dig into this. Let's go to Romans chapter number 13, verse number 11 through 14. And do this, knowing the time, that now it is high time to wake out of sleep. For now our salvation is nearer than when we first believed. The night is far spent. The day is at hand. Therefore let us cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk properly, as in the day, not in revelry or drunkenness, not in lewdness and lust, not in strife and envy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make no provision for the flesh to fulfill its lusts. The Apostle Paul, he is emphasizing a high standard of moral conduct in those scriptures, particularly in the view of the nearness of the Lord's return. And that's when our salvation will be complete, right? The way to our salvation is twofold, okay? The way to salvation is twofold. Positively, number one, positively, we must put on the Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to his lordship, accepting his moral standards, living in constant fellowship with him, and depending on his strength. So that's number one. Number two, negatively, we are to make no provision for the flesh, doing nothing to foster its sensual desires and its appetites. All right? There was a gentleman I haven't read the book in full, but I've been listening to it, the audiobook, but a gentleman by the name of Oliver Burkeman, he wrote a book that's titled 4,000 Weeks. And his intent was to unpack our relationship with time and how we use it. Has anybody read this book, 4,000 Weeks? Okay. 4,000 weeks. Anybody know what 4,000 weeks roughly represents? Anybody know? 4,000 weeks is roughly 80 years. And that's the average lifespan of me and you. The average human lifespan is absurdly, insultingly brief. Assuming you live to be 80, you have just over 4,000 weeks. We have just over 4,000 weeks. 4,000 weeks, the book that he wrote, it's not a religious or spiritual book, so don't go read it to get spirituality out of it or anything like that. It's in fact, it's a secular book that's more a philosophical work that talks about making the best use of our time and using our time to do the things we enjoy doing. Obviously, that's not what you want to spend your time gleaning any spirituality from. But it's interesting. He just talks about we've only got 4,000 weeks. We have 4,000 weeks. That's 4,000 Mondays. That's 4,000 Wednesdays. That's 4,000 Sundays. And for some of us, our time has gotten a lot shorter, right? But for you graduating seniors, you teenagers, and you young adults, Lord willing, you have quite a few more weeks in front of you that a lot of us don't have anymore. And I want you to start thinking about that. I want you to think really hard about that. I want you to start thinking about how best to use those 4,000 weeks that you've been given. All of you. I want you all to start thinking critically about how best to use those 4,000 weeks. Oliver Burkeman, he also says in his book that when you get to the end of your life, the sum total of all the things you paid attention to will have been your life. Graduating seniors and teenagers and young adults, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. What are you paying attention to? What are you spending your time on? You know, likely some of us, and throughout the days and whatever, we have our phones in our hands, right? They're in our hands all the time. They're in our back pockets all the time. At some point later today, what I want you to do is a lot of you, depending on what phone you have, I want you to go into your phone and I want you to check out your screen time. Your phone should tell you how much time you're spending on that thing. See how much time you're spending on this device alone. You know, statistics vary on this subject, but I've seen a statistic that says the average American spends an average of 7 hours and 4 minutes on their phone a day. OMG. 7 hours. Like I said, statistics vary, depending on which study, but it's at least 5+ hours is what there was one reputable source that said over 7 hours per day. That is nearly 1/3 of the day. 1/3. This one is kind of hard for someone like me to navigate because, quite honestly and transparently, a lot of, what brings home the bacon and the bread, right, to my family is spent on these things here. My work is on computers. I'm a cybersecurity and IT guy. Like, what else do what else? If I didn't have these devices, obviously I wouldn't have a job. But it's hard for me to navigate to some extent because a lot of my job is on a computer and a phone. Responding to emails and text messages, it's all part of my job. So a lot of my job is on the phone and the computer. Many of us are working from home nowadays, right? We work from home nowadays, and quite honestly, it drives me a little bit crazy, but if the boss sends an email, right, we're expected now to look at that email, no matter what time of day it is, and respond to that email, whether we're sitting down for dinner with the family or whatever, we're expected to respond to it, and it's really hard to adjust. Really hard to adjust right now. COVID did a lot of terrible things, and I think this is one of them. My wife and I, we try really hard not to allow phones at the dinner table, okay? There have been times when, transparently, I've picked mine up, and one of my kids, I think it was Callan or maybe Ellie, says, Dad, no phones at the dinner table. But it just so happened to be something urgent at work, right? And it's like I felt like I had to respond at that time. But like I said, the average American, over 7 hours. 7 hours. And 41% of adults say that they struggle managing their screen time, and I'll admit that I'm one of them. Sometimes it's just out of habit, and your phone's just sitting right next to you, and you just pick it up and you just start scrolling through social media, or you're looking at YouTube or something like that, and you don't even recognize or realize that you're doing it, right? It's sitting there, and your mind's idle or something like that, and you pick up your phone, you start looking at stuff. And if you're Gen Z, that's someone born between 1997 and 2012. All of you kids and young adults who are 11 years old to 26 years old, your screen time averages 9 hours a day. 9 hours per day. Think of how many hours you go to school, right? Then 9 hours in front of a screen, whether that's watching TV or playing video games, scrolling through social media, or whatever it is. Recently there's a study that just came out that talked about the damage that screen time is doing to the young folks. As their brain is developing, right, really developing, at a young age, it actually, the amount of time that we spend on screens is having a long-term impact and effect on their lives. They're seeing that now in the studies. Some experts believe that we should spend less than 2 hours a day outside of work on our screens. And, I mean, I still think 2 hours is quite a bit of time to spend on a device. But, I mean, listen to this, though. If you spend 4 hours a day on your phone or on a computer or playing video games for 60 years, so if you spend 4 hours a day for 60 years, that means that's 4 hours a day, okay, for 60 years. So some of you are 20 years old, right? Do the math. 60 is 80 years old. That's your average lifespan. So from today until you're 80, you spend 4 hours a day on that device. You know what that math works out to? That's 10 years of your life. 10 years of your life that you would spend on a device. Scrolling through social media, doing whatever you're doing on your device. I'm using this because it resonates, right? We're living in such a technological world right now, and we've got access to everything right here on these things. And the whole point is to talk about what are we spending our time on, right? And I think this is part of it. This is definitely part of it. But 4 hours a day for 60 years, that's 10 years that you could spend of your life doing that, whatever that is. And when we stand before God one day, and I'm not trying to over-spiritualize things here, but God gives us time. He gives us time, and we're to be good stewards of our time. And if we're to stand before God and say, God, I spent 10 years of my life in front of a screen, whatever, watching the life of some family out in California, who you don't even know, right? And we're watching them on Instagram or watching them on whatever media platform they're on and what they post about their family and their kids. Some of you love to follow people and families on social media that you don't even know. And you get caught up in you get all caught up in their life, and these people are sharing all their personal details with you. And I mean, this should make us scratch our head a little bit and ask ourselves, why are they telling us all this stuff? Why are they sharing all their personal details? Why am I spending my time watching their life, their drama, whatever it is? Right? Why are we doing that? I'm asking. I'm not talking to you as if I don't deal with this same stuff, y'all. But I want you to remember that God gives us time. It's an important thing. He gives us a certain period. We all know that life is what? It's a vapor of smoke. We say it all the time. We say that life is a vapor of smoke. Why not preach about it, right? Why not talk about it? God gives us time. People say, I don't have enough time. My response is always, what are you doing with the time that He's given you, right? Like, what? I'm actually get tired of hearing that excuse, like I don't have enough time. It's like, to some extent, I believe some people that say that, but for others, it's like, dude, I just saw you sitting on your phone for an hour doing whatever. Like, don't tell me you don't have enough time, right? It's puzzling to me. I mean, we all know that life is fleeting. We talk about this all the time, right? We talk about time all the time. And we've all heard that life just flies by. It's going by so quickly. We hear, enjoy these days, right? Enjoy the time. I can remember, I'm sure you all can too, but can you remember like the days when you were young and growing up, and it's like you thought life was so long. And you think you've got such a long time to live. 18-year-olds, listen to me, and young adults and kids. By the time you hit your 30s and your 40s and so on, you start thinking, holy cow, time is flying by. I really began noticing this, when I had kids. All the pictures we've taken over the years, right, of kids, and you're like, holy cow, we just blinked, and we've got an 18-year-old, two 18-year-olds that are graduating from school, right? It's crazy, just this conundrum of time, right? Life is flying by, and it's fleeting. And we're spending so much of our time doing things that probably don't make sense and are wasted. Proverbs 6 says, I'll tie this together. You'll probably wonder why I'm bringing this up, but Proverbs 6 says, I think I have this here. No, I don't have it. It says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler. Yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard?" It's talking about us, y'all. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. So what this is talking about is if you're just kicking back and relaxing and picking up your phone and just chilling and doing nothing, this is saying a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. What it's saying is poverty will come on you like a thief and scarcity like an armed man. So don't expect anything to come of life if that's who you are. Let's think about a couple of the verses in that scripture, and I'm going to replace the word sleep with the word screen. I don't know if God agrees with me doing this, but I'm going to do it. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your screen? A little screen, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. If you spend the 9 hours of your day scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or whatever you're scrolling through, and pornography, whatever it is, if that's what you're spending your time on, life's not going to turn out very well for you. When we look at our screens, one of the major problems is that you guys, it's not real life, right? A lot of what we see out there is not. We're looking at fantasies. We're looking at, we're comparing. Oftentimes we compare our lives to people, right? All this stuff is in our face, and we're like, oh man, look what they have. Look what Garrett's have. Like, I want that, right? And the problem is we see all the good parts of a lot of folks' lives on social media. People love to post stuff out there about how wonderful their family is. And I got news. Everything, that might be what you see on social media, but folks, they're just like us, right? I mean, everybody's dealing with junk and stuff in their lives. So the big thing is, though, I think many times, when we are watching this stuff, following whatever the example I threw out earlier about the family in California or whatever it is, you're following them and you're looking at their life and they're making millions of dollars, they've got a mansion and everything like that. What this leads to is us coveting one another. As you see these big, beautiful houses and whatever on social media, you think that that's what we should look like. Why don't we have that, right? We see a house that came right out of a magazine, and many times, we're lying in bed looking at this stuff at our phones and become discontent with what God has blessed us with because we see what other people have. And a lot of what we see on our screens, it's not real life, it's fantasy. And trust me, those fantasy families or those fantasy celebrities or those fantasy people that we follow, they're human. They've got struggles just like us. Proverbs 12:11 says, "Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense." Yikes. Did I read anybody's mail this morning? No, they're not. We have a responsibility to use our time wisely. We also have a responsibility, parents, to set that example for our children. You hear me? We have a responsibility as parents to set the example and to use that time that God has entrusted us with our own children. Trust me, I'm not doing it right. I'll be the first to admit it, that I'm not doing it right. It's a work in progress with me. I've got some things I need to do differently. Colossians 4:5 says, walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, making the best use of our time. When I think about that, I think of how often we're spending on screens, whether we're walking in a parking lot. Man, millions of us should be walking around with broken, bloody noses. The number of us that are, walking around like this, like, it's amazing how we don't run into more walls or cars or get run over or what. I mean, kids crossing, crosswalks like this. I'm like, what in the world? Like, it's amazing to me how we're not all like in the ER getting our noses fixed or plastic surgery or something. But, whether we're walking in the parking lot or sitting in a line at the grocery store or walking through the mall, wherever we are, we're on our phones and we're looking down, and how often we're missing opportunities. This is what I came to talk to you about, how often we're missing opportunities that God is putting in front of us to engage with somebody and to be an encouragement to somebody. I feel like that I don't have many strangers because I feel like I'm pretty good with, talking to anybody. Occasionally I think, I don't know if I embarrass them, but I bet I might embarrass my family every once in a while just because I'll just talk to, I don't know them, right? But I'm not afraid to reach out and talk to somebody and encourage them or mention something to them, maybe to brighten their day, whether it's the waitress or whoever at the restaurant, just, saying something that is being a, part of that light in the world. Actually, I know an example. So I coach baseball, my kids' baseball teams, and my family laughs at me because oftentimes I'll coach third base. And part of what I love to do is talk to the opposing third baseman on the other team. I'm coaching there, and he's standing there, so I'm just going to strike up. Oftentimes, these kids are weirded out. They're like, why is this guy talking to me, right? Like, leave me alone. But I'm just, making fun and just, having a good time with them and asking them, how much they love baseball and, what do they like to do in life and all that stuff. But they do make fun of me about doing that. But I can strike up a conversation, just with anybody. Maybe a dad joke every once in a while just to encourage somebody and let them know that, they can smile every once in a while. But even that example, right? You sit in restaurants and you look at families sitting at the table and it's like everybody's on their phone. And I'm like, oh my goodness. We've become such an impersonal society and an impersonal culture, and we're not even engaging with people that we're coming in contact with, right? We're just looking down at our phones, and the word says that we're to be making the best use of our time, and I can't imagine that's the best use of our time. Psalm 90:12 says, and you all know this one, teach us to number our days, that we might gain a heart of wisdom. And as we read earlier, although it's in a different translation than I'm going to read now, but back to Romans, I want to reread that because it says this is all the more urgent. Hopefully, me bringing this scripture back up, it'll actually hit home for you. Different translation of Romans 13, though. It says this is all the more urgent. This is Paul talking to us. This is all the more urgent, for you know how late it is. Time is running out. Wake up. He says, wake up, for our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is almost gone. The day of salvation will soon be here. So remove your dark deeds like dirty clothes and put on the shining armor of right living, because we belong to the day. We must live decent lives for all to see. Don't participate in the darkness of wild parties and drunkenness, in sexual promiscuity and immoral living or in quarreling and jealousy. Instead, he says, don't do that stuff, but instead of doing those things, clothe yourself with the presence of our Lord Jesus Christ. And don't let yourself think about ways to indulge your evil desires. Don't feed them. How often do we feed the crap that we deal with by looking at the crap that's on these devices, right? My goodness, that's... I know people fast these things every once in a while, and you kind of now realize why they do it. I'm spending too much time on it. Maybe the junk that I'm watching on it isn't good for me. It's like no wonder people are fasting these things. They are convicted that either they're spending too much time on it or they're looking at the wrong stuff. Not only do we spend a lot of time in our devices, and I just talked about this a little bit, it's not only about time, but it's also about content. Time and content. What are we watching? What are we seeing? The content that we're looking at on our devices, it's, the stuff that's streamed over the internet. Because how many of you, when you look at the verse like drunkenness, sexual immorality, immoral living, or, when you turn on Netflix, every TV show now, the sexual content is horrible. It is right in front of you. It is in all of our faces now. I mean, to me, a lot of the PG-related material today used to be rated R. Am I the only one that recognizes that? I feel like when I was a kid, the rated R stuff was, holy cow. You wanted to avoid that at all costs. But now it's like I'm looking at PG stuff, and I'm like, what in the world? You look at a Disney movie, and they've got these subtle little adult material in there. It's like, oh my goodness. How in the world did they get that through? We call it humor. We call it, trying to please a vast audience. Just the other day, it was maybe a few weeks ago, though, I turned on Netflix because I wanted to watch a show that I like to watch. And I had to quickly change it. The kids Callan, I think, was in the room. I had to quickly change it because, when you pull up Netflix, they usually have, I don't know what it is, maybe a popular show or an advertisement or something like that that's right on the home screen of Netflix. And the show was called Sex Life. And my goodness, I didn't even have to turn the movie on. If you just saw the trailer that automatically starts playing when you turn on Netflix, I'm like, click, and hurried up to try and turn that show off before Callan saw it, my 9-year-old. I'm like, oh my gosh. Commercials are just as bad. You got rated R commercials now, right? I've stopped watching a lot of trash that's out there because I really began to be convicted about all this. I'll be real with you, my wife's been on me too. She's like, we gotta stop. We gotta clean it up here. But I stopped watching a lot of trash because that's what's out there. And I began to get convicted about what I was watching and how long I was spending watching all that stuff. There were certain things I would watch, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but way back in the day, I'd watch certain things and then wake up and feel a darkness over me, Have you ever been in that situation where you've watched so much crap or crud, or maybe you've just spent so much time on it that you're just out of sorts? And I'm sure all of us have binge watched something, right? We've all binge watched our shows, one more episode. Let's watch one more episode. And before we know it, it's 1 a.m. and we've got to wake up at 6. And we've watched 4 episodes. We wake up, we hit the snooze button. We wake up and we're like, oh crap, we missed the alarm, right? And now we're waking up late and we haven't read our Bible and we can barely get out the door on time. Everybody's mad at everybody. You're yelling at your wife. You're yelling at the kids. You're kicking the dog, whatever it is. And it's messed up your entire day because you've spent 6 hours. And it impacts you throughout your day, Am I just being real with you this morning? Hopefully I am. We spend so much, of our time and our hours watching a show that's not even worthy of it. The Bible says we are to walk as properly as we do in the daytime. And that's another thing. A lot of the stuff we're watching is late at night, and we're watching in our bedrooms, and the content now is everywhere. We don't have to be in some hotel room anymore by ourselves to have some pornography right in front of us. It's on our devices. It's on our phones. It's on our computers. It's at our fingertips. And we as a culture, we have repackaged porn. We have all these devices, we have all these services of high production value, these fascinating storylines of how these characters that we can kind of relate to, these beautiful actresses and actors. And it's not this is high quality stuff that's being pumped out now that's trying to grab our attention. It's not like some low quality thing that's being filmed in some dark alley somewhere. These are right here on Netflix, they're right here on Hulu and all these streaming services that we have. And every show that you turn on now has some sort of vulgarity to it feels like. And, there's horrible sex scenes and, within the first few minutes of it. And once we've seen these, it's kind of like, what we've talked about. It's like you start to, at least the conviction should hit some of you, right? Be careful, little eyes, what you see. Be careful, little ears, what you hear, right? Because once you see it, you're really never going to forget it. It's just wild. Like, that hit the nail on the head for me. It's like, you don't have to be in a hotel room by yourself anymore. They're just right there at your fingertips. Anytime you want it. And guess what? It's now just called a TV show. It's just a TV show. It's not porn. It's just a TV show. A lot of people I know, and I'm going to say it might convict some of you, but it definitely convicted my wife and I. There's a show out there that gets a ton of good ratings, and I can see why, because again, it's very high quality and it's very intriguing and it grabs people's attention. There's a show called Yellowstone, right? Y'all heard of Yellowstone? You don't have to raise your hand if you watch it, but a lot of people who watch that show are Christians, and my wife and I, transparently, we had to turn it off. We were gripped by it the first episode or couple or something like that, but man, once we got into it, we just had to shut it off. The language was so bad. Literally every 5 minutes it felt like an F-bomb was dropped. And there was, nudity and stuff like that in there. The old Travis would have watched it. I would have watched that. And I don't know what season they're on now, 7, 8, 9, something like that. I would have watched it. I would have shook it off. But, God really convicted my heart. And that's why I'm sharing this, because I realized that watching those things and the darkness that it would have on my life and the impact that it would have on my life the next day. If nothing else, it's like, hey, Travis, you should probably stop watching that because it ruins you for the next day. Does anybody get that feeling every once in a while when you see something or you're watching something? It's like, you better shut that off. Tomorrow's not going to be good, right? That happens. It happens to me. That's called conviction. I don't know if we preach on this enough, Pastor, but that's called the Holy Ghost convicting your heart. If you don't get those thoughts, I question whether you're in right standing with the Lord. I'll just say it that way. Okay? Don't judge me. Somebody has to. I'm just being real with you here. But we had to turn that show off. There is a reason that God warns us to be careful of what we're watching, and that's not just a command for our children. Okay? That nursery rhyme or whatever, that be careful, little eyes, what you see, that's not just for the kids. That's for us. We're to be careful about what our eyes see and what we allow in our minds and hearts. Folks, we just have to be careful. Okay? We got to be careful. These screens can be very useful. All right? I'm not debating that. There's a lot of... I get so many ideas and tips and tricks from YouTube and the internet. I don't know how I would do a lot of the things that I do without the internet right now, but I think these are also tools, though, that Satan is using in our culture, and it's slowly happening, and we don't even realize it. And because now it's just being repackaged as it's just another TV show. Another problem with all this is that we are coming up with these excuses on why it's okay to watch this or that. I heard a podcast by Sissy Graham Lynch. Anybody know Sissy Graham Lynch? She's actually Franklin Graham's daughter, Billy Graham's granddaughter. She had said that they were watching, she was talking to a friend of hers who was watching some just bad show, and she was like, well, why do you watch that? There's people making love and nudity in there. And the person that she was talking to said, well, they're a married couple, so it's okay if I watch that, and if I watch it with my husband. And I'm like, why? What's the rationale behind that? I don't get. That's an excuse to try and support your reasoning to continue to watch the show that you like to watch. It's just an excuse, right? Everybody's heard the saying, right? Excuses are like rear ends, right? Everybody has one. They all stink. I'm going to use that one here. That's what it is. It's an excuse. We all have one. We all have our excuses to why we do what we do on these devices. We all have a rear end, and they all stink. That's the same way with our excuses. Oh, it's just one F word. Oh, it's just one sex scene. Oh, they only showed the women's breasts. Oh, I'm an adult. I can handle this. It's not going to impact me. We just have to remember that this has all been repackaged. And now it's like, in this culture today, all of that stuff is okay for us to watch and see. All of us, kids, adults included. Everything that's coming your way, it's accepted right now in society. It's all normalized. Should have probably ministered this word 20 years ago, I don't know, but maybe we could have got out in front of it a little bit more. I'm almost done. Psalms 101 says, I will be careful to lead a blameless life. When will you come to me? I will conduct the affairs of my house with a blameless heart. This is such conviction for me. I'm going to reread this. Psalm 101. I will be careful to lead a blameless life. When will you come to me? I will conduct the affairs of my house with a blameless heart. I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. I was reading that the other day as I was preparing for this, I was listening to the Bible the other day and was preparing for this message. And, I thought to myself, as a dad, I set that responsibility for my household. That I conduct the affairs of my house, and what am I going to allow in it? Even if it's behind closed doors, and my children aren't there, that has an effect on my daily life because it's sin, and sin is going to blossom, it's going to grow. It's hard to contain if you stay stuck in it. We often think that all this stuff won't have a negative effect on us, but because we're just watching it. But it's so powerful what it can do to us. All of the stuff that we see, all the stuff that we hear. You think about it. How many of you, way back when you were a kid, somebody said something to you that was degrading? It was, called you fat, called you ugly, whatever it is. How many of you still struggle with some of that stuff that people said to you back then, right? That's something you heard, and it went right into here. That is no different from something you see that goes right into here. Am I right? Does that resonate? We think it's not going to have a negative effect on us just because, we watched it and we think we can move on. But I tell you what, it does have an impact. Whether it happens, the next day or whenever it is. I mean, shoot, guys, let me talk to you for a second, though. We have to set the standard. We have to. What is the right word here? I'm struggling. I'm just going to read that Psalm 101 again. We have to lead a blameless life, and we have to conduct the affairs of our house with a blameless heart. And we cannot look to approve anything that is vile. That's it in a nutshell. And that's for the guys. We should take up another offering because that was really good, Pastor. All right. Matthew 6 says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? That's just something I personally have experienced after watching some of the crap that I've watched over the years. As I said, I would wake up and it'd just be kind of like this darkness, this dark cloud over me as I watched stuff that wasn't worthy of my time. You know, and what I just talked about, that was a lot about the content. But let's go back to, when we start thinking about just the time that we spend. So again, I want to go back, right? It's time and it's content. How long do you spend on devices? And then what are you watching? What are you checking out when you're on those devices? When we're talking about like binge watching a show, for example, for 4 hours at night, and we think back on the statistics that we spend an average of 10 years of our lives in front of a screen, how do we stand before God at the judgment of believers and say, Lord, I spent 10 years of my life watching filth? It's going to happen. Y'all, if you believe any of this, if you believe this word at all, there's a day coming, right? Yes. We call it a judgment day. And I don't mean to be doom and gloom here, but like Pastor's preached on this several times before, but I have to venture to think that the Lord is going to ask us, why in the world did you spend 10 years of your life doing that? And watching whatever it is, orgies or drunkenness or quarreling and jealousy, as Paul said in Romans. Or even if we're scrolling through Instagram and watching these strangers that really have no purpose in our life, and how do we stand before God and talk to Him about that? Like, why are you watching this family every day that you have no association with? Maybe you're thinking, okay, Travis, you're kind of over-spiritualizing this, but no, it's true, right? Am I saying, what needs to be said here? It's having such a heavy impact on our culture, and how it's having such a huge impact on our younger generation for sure. There are so many things that are trying so hard and desperately to pull them away from this, and it's a construct of the enemy. A huge construct of the enemy. You think of the anxiety and you think of the depression that kids and adults alike are facing. A lot of it's coming from, video games and TV shows and all this junk. Y'all, we know that Hollywood is a mess. If anybody doesn't believe that, we'll pray for you after the service. But Hollywood is a mess, and they're the ones that are capturing our attention. Just add 2 and 2 together. This isn't Common Core math. It's just 2 + 2 = 4. There's no roundabout different way of calculating it there. But if Hollywood is a mess, and that's what we're plugging our minds into every day, guess what's going to turn out to be a mess? Our minds. It's not rocket science. We know that we're indoctrinating our children with Hollywood's ideologies. So why do we think it's okay to watch this stuff? It's allowing all this garbage to seep into our hearts and into our minds. And of course, like I said, it's all become private now. Nobody has to know we're watching it. We can do it anywhere. We can do it everywhere. We can do it at all times. We can do it 10 hours a day. But all this stuff is actually scriptural. All this stuff about time is scriptural. God commands us to be careful what our eyes look at, just like the dangers that David experienced, right? Y'all know the story of David, and it was just his eyes and seeing Bathsheba. And you know what that led to. Satan has used the media, he's used the TV, he's used the screens, he's used it to infiltrate this content that is so against God. It's so against living a holy life, and it keeps us from living a holy life. And in this world, we're continuously, we're facing darkness all the time, and it's getting more and more difficult to take a stand for Jesus and to live in light. There's got to be something we have to change. We're filling our lives right now with darkness, and we're filling our lives with such nastiness. And that is Satan using his power to infiltrate our hearts in the darkness of the night when we're watching on our screens. What if all of the time that we spend on all these devices and such is also, the enemy distracting us from living a vibrant life, a full life that Jesus gave us? Did something click with you there? Right? What if we changed what we're spending our time on and actually change it into what the Lord has called us to spend our time on? Think about that. Even with your spouse or with your friends, the word they now use to describe, think about this. There's this word out there now that's called technoference. Technoference. That's when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody. Reverend Sunny, do you have your phone? Or somebody. Who's got their phone that's close here? Good. Reverend Sunny doesn't have her phone. That's good. That was a test. Melinda's got her phone. Look at your phone, Melinda. Hey, don't look at me, though. Look at your phone. Melinda, how was your day today? Did you have a good time? No, don't answer these questions. You're paying attention to your phone. This is a test for you, too. Melinda, how was your day today? Did you have a good day? How are the kids? How's the family? Is your mom doing okay? How's your grandmother? How are your kids? Are you recovering from your hip injury? Melinda, hey, Melinda, I'm talking to you. Hey, Melinda. That's technoference. Technoference. Did that hit home with anybody? Or parents, how many times you try and talk to your teenager, or even vice versa? You got your 9-year-old trying to talk to you, hey, Dad, can we do this? Hey, Dad, can we do that? And you're deaf to it because you're sitting here like this, That's technoference. Or your spouse, 100%. How can we take back our time? That's what I want to ask you. That's the long and the short of it here. We've allowed our culture, we've allowed our social media, we've allowed all these streaming services to steal and rob our time. And we're allowing culture to kind of shift our hearts and our minds. And Satan is doing his best, and he's doing it, he's using all these things in a mighty way. How can we take back our time? How can we start to change the way that we're spending those 4,000 weeks? I'm challenging you today. I don't know, 100, 150, I don't know how many people are in here, but we're a small group of people. How can I effectively challenge you to change the way that you're spending your 4,000 weeks? I know some of us, we've got much shorter. Some of you have a lot longer, Lord willing. Graduating seniors, you have the opportunity to really control, to really take control of what you spend your time on. And I imagine some of you, before you've wished that time would move faster. Pastor talked about this, I'm so ready for school to be done, right? Let's get time to move quicker. Don't say that anymore. It goes too fast already. It goes too fast. I saw parents with tears in their eyes as you guys were up here. They recognized that, holy crap, where did my little baby go, Where did, Where'd that little rascal go? Elijah's still a little rascal, but where'd that little rascal go? Angel can vouch for that, right? He's still a little rascal. Even though he's a lot taller than you, Mama still beats up on him every once in a while. He's a little rascal. But I'll leave you with this. Let me tell you, take advantage of the time that you've been given. All right? This is more, I don't know if this is really self-help or what this is, but time is something you can't get back. It is a commodity that once it's gone, it's gone. Of all the material things that you can lose and regain, whether it's that dollar bill in your pocket, the shirt on your back, you can't get time back. Go spend the day with your mom. Go spend the day with your dad, your grandparents. Go spend time reading your Bible. Those new Bibles that you got, we gave them to you for a reason. Share the gospel with others. Set your phone down. Set your device down. Get them off the dinner table. Set a time in your day that restricts all use of these things for a certain period of the day. My last point, I was thinking about, all right, so how do we do this? Jesus told us. He said, where do we need to spend our time? He says to go therefore and make disciples, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. That's the Great Commission. Let's stand. Father, I give you just the honor and the glory, Lord. I thank you for that reminder, and I thank you for a lot of conviction here today, Lord. Lord, we give you all the glory. We thank you, Father God, that, Lord, I want to pray specifically that this word would resonate and stick with us. Lord, I know it happens to me, Lord, that oftentimes we hear a message, and again, life catches up with us, and we forget the message. We understand the concept, but we forget, to apply it, Lord. And I pray that application would happen, and that this would be one way that we can transform our lives. Lord, forgive me. Lord, forgive me for not spending the time that you've afforded me in the right way. Help us, Lord, and I pray that this message would not be something that would, Lord, would make anybody feel ashamed or remorseful, Lord, but this would just be a starting point for the rest of our 4,000 weeks. That we're going to change something as we leave here to make the rest of our 4,000 weeks more actionable, more exciting, more productive. And I thank you, Lord, that one thing that we can do is to be that light and to share the good news. Be with us as we go here, Lord. We thank you so much. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Yeah, if anybody needs prayer, please.